Hi everyone, and welcome to Life Creates Art. This is Shelley, and we are on part 3 of our Back to Basics. So today we're going to be talking about volume, shadowing, and 3D. So making things jump off of your canvas. Now, before I get started though, I want to remind everyone to go to our website. It's a pretty awesome website. We're still tweaking it a little bit, and sign your name in there so you can get our spring newsletter, things like that. It'd be really exciting to see you and have you communicate with me in that sense. And also leave comments below. I really want to hear from you. I want to hear how this is helping you, and I want to hear where you're watching from. So really appreciate that. Now, we're talking about volume. Last week, we dealt with value, which is kind of very similar to volume in that value brings out, you recognize the light and the dark in things. But in volume, you're taking those contrasts of the light and the dark, and you're bringing it out of the canvas. You're taking it from 2D to 3D. Things are going to pop off of your canvas. So volume, what is it? Volume is basically the structure of an object and how the light hits that object. And the shadowing, of course, is something that we all need to learn if we want our objects, our paintings to be 3D and sort of jump off the page. It's really an important lesson to learn. And so we think of volume, we think of the same music volume. And you turn up the volume on your music and it makes it louder, and you hear that bass more, makes it jump and pop more. It's real on your canvas when you use volume, when things are touchable and accessible, when you actually utilize volume and shadowing for 3D. Now, back, just a little history lesson. Thousands of years ago, the Egyptians used to do these hieroglyphics on walls, and they were very, very 2D. There was no shadowing or anything like that going on. It wasn't until about 300 BC when things started to shape up for artists, and they started playing a little bit with some volume and exploring how to bring shadows in to make things pop. You'll see here a banquet scene. The wall, this was actually on the wall of a tomb back in 4th century BC. And you can see how they're working with a little bit of the volume there to really bring it out. And then Pompeii fresco, and wow, you can really see how Pompeii was right in line with bringing out those light and dark shades. Now we go to the 1300s, which is when really everything started to shift. The reason everything started to shift was because oil paints were introduced back then. And so what we have now is longer drying times. So artists were able to play and wait and be patient and really look at their art and take time to work with that volume and how to get things to come out off of that 2D canvas. So that was the 1300s. We've got here the painting. It's the Death and Ascension of St. Francis. And you can see this was a lot of dramatic depth brought into this painting. And so that's around the 1300s. Now, 1400s, we see another painting where we actually see the shadowing. If you look, the shadowing under the horses. So people were really stepping it up. And this painting style, it really brings that scene to life. It makes it look alive. And that's what you want with volume. Now we have Matisse. We come into a little more of the modern time. We've got Henri Matisse and we've got Picasso, who then took it the opposite way, and they exaggerated flatness. They exaggerated 2D paintings. And so we've got a few here from Picasso. Now, the one with the woman, the very colorful painting with the woman, you could actually see a little bit of shadow on the side. So he wanted to bring out a little 3D, but the rest of the painting is just flat and 2D. Now, some Matisse too. We have this beautiful artwork, but it's very, very flat and very 2D. not utilizing shadowing and volume. So now, volume. What is volume? It's how a light hits an object. And so that creates the shadows. And what we want to do is we want to convey that onto a 2D canvas. And we're going to do that today by using some objects here that I have, and I'm going to shine a light source on them. But the one thing you want to look at with volume, if you really want to learn about volume, is you start to look and you recognize, what is the shape of my object? What is the light source? Which side is the light source coming in? Is it coming from the top? Is it coming from the side? Is it coming at an angle? Really pay attention to things when you're talking about creating volume. Things are not always going to be a solid object. For example, the poison bottle. So the poison bottle is a solid object, and you can see the cast shadow in the back. We're going to go over this a little more, but that's a pretty solid object. And then we go to the man, the photo of the man, which you can clearly see which direction the light is coming from. But there's a lot of intricate shadows taking place in that photo. I'm asking you to pay attention. Go take photographs of things. Take photographs of people. And be sure that you're paying attention to where your light source is. This also helps you with when you're doing lettering and you want to have that lettering look like it's coming off the page. It helps with that as well. Just recognizing which direction the light source is coming from. And the color of the light source makes a difference too. Sometimes we have white light, sometimes we have a little bit of yellow light. That's going to make a difference as well. Now, with volume and shadowing, you're looking at perhaps needing to bring some shadow in, but what if your room is well lit? You have to also pay attention to the fact that you're not always going to have that value that's really dark and really light. So you have to pay attention to those subtle lines of darkness that you're going to have. Even if the room is well lit, there's still going to be some subtle lines for shadowing. So now, take photos, be aware of values and pay attention to where they are. We are going to cover now where an object, this is a sphere we have here. And so the light source, you can see, is coming from this direction. So we have the light hitting the sphere right here. And then we have what's called a highlight. That is going to be something you have to really, really look to, pay attention to, because there's going to be a bright white area on the sphere. Even though it's light here, the light is still hitting, but it's pretty clear that the light is coming from this direction, because this is the highlight right here, the whitest part of the sphere. And then we have what we call the halftones that we bring in as the darkness comes around the corner of this sphere. We have the form shadow, which is this dark line right around the sphere. We have even a reflected shadow. We have not really a shadow, a reflected highlight, which bounces from the light off the ground and comes back onto the base of the object. Pay attention to all of these things when you're looking at an object. Now, last week we did a grayscale, and I have items here that we are going to paint. And I'm going to show you some of the reflected light, but be sure that you're paying attention to all these things. You don't need to memorize these things. I'm just asking you to pay attention to where they might be. So we have the reflected light, the form shadow, these halftones, and then we have the cast shadow. The cast shadow is going to be different depending on how far or how close your light is. It may be longer. It may fade out more, it may be larger, but it's always going to be in the shape of the object. And pay attention to those sorts of things. So now we're going to move on to, we're going to paint the objects that I have right over here, and we're going to take care of this. Now, last week we did our value with this crystal, and I didn't work on it at all. But like I said, it wasn't about the beauty of the crystal for me. It was about the just showing you what value is. So we're going to flip this over and we're going to use this section to work on volume and shadowing. And we'll get started right now. All right, everyone. So here is what we are going to be working with. I have this block of wood and actually one of my little things from my art extras that I've added to my paints. I took the label off. And what I'm going to first do to create this volume is I'm going to sketch out, which is what I've got here. Just a simple block of wood. Again, this is not going to be perfect, but we are just sketching things out here. And the light source is clearly coming from one direction, you can see, from over this direction. And it is hitting the block and the tub. I'll call it a tub. Okay. Okay, this just gives us an idea that it is sitting on something. Now, what we have here is we have the light source coming and it's hitting the block of wood pretty solid right here in this front section. However, if you can see, and it may be that we need to put the picture up a couple of times, but right here on this corner is the whitest white. That is the highlight that we were talking about. So this is the light, oopsie, this is the highlight. And then we've got the darkest shadow here. The darkest shadow is here. And then we have some other halftones here as well as the top. So let's get to work on that, and I will continue to point things out. But what we're going to do is we're just going to lay in our white. The jar, you can see the edge of the jar along here is also that highlight, and then it gets whiter. However, you notice there is a shadow here that is reflecting off of this block of wood. Now, the actual formed shadow, the darkest part of this is right here in the center. And then this reflected light back here, you can see it's not dark over here. This is the darkest part of the tub. The reason that this is not really dark, even though the light source is coming from this direction, is because the light is bouncing off of the wall and coming back onto this side of the tub. So again, this is all a part of just really paying attention to where the shadows are hitting. Put that all the way down, bring it around, and then same with this. Right. We have another little section here that I'll bring in later along the block of wood. You can see here that is also a highlight. So there's a highlight here, and then right up here, there's another highlight. So we'll pay attention to that. Let's bring in some of our mid-tones though. I've got a little blue and purple on my palette as well, besides just the black and white. And that way it brings in a little bit of color, because I like to do that. That's too much. And continue to play with your colors. Remember to do your grayscale. Work on that. So now I'm going to bring in this side. little bit of that shadow here from the block of wood. Now, if you notice right here, there is a shadow line right here. That is our made shadow. We're going to just bring that right down here. I'm going to lighten this up a little bit. We've got a little bit of a, oops, a little too much. A little bit lighter down through here. And then we've got this reflected light over here. So it's not 100% white, but it is a little bit, it's lighter, definitely. And then we've got our line of solid white over here that is actually a shadow that is reflecting off of this. Let's bring in this a little bit more white. Now again, we're just paying attention to where the light is hitting on this tub and this block of wood. I'm going to bring this in a little bit. Darker right here. So we have more of that. Now around the top here, you can see as it curves around, because there's a little bit of a ridge, we've got a little darker shadow there, lightening up as it goes along. Now, of course, that's what's going to happen to a shadow. It's going to lighten up as it goes further. But then we're going to be bringing in more of that white here on the ridge. So just paying attention to where the shadows are. And of course, we blend in. We're just laying out the darkest colors right now. I'm going to make this a little more dramatic and bring in more of this darker shade rather than the blue. All right, I'm going to darken this up a little bit. And now pay attention to this part right here and this part right at the base. Right at the base, we have the darkest part of the shadowing. And we want to be sure to bring that in, because that will give us the shape of the object. And I've got a little more here on the lid. Bring that around. Okay. So let's work on this one a little bit too. We still have to finish up our halftones here on the block of wood. Now, the one thing about this block of wood is that there is the light that bounces off the edge. So this is a little darker and this is more of a solid white. So I'm going to bring in more of a solid white line through here to differentiate the shape. And then we've got, whoopsie, too much paint, that really white, solid highlight right here. And it comes right up against that dark shadow, that main shadow. Now, also got it brought around here at the base. And a little bit over here. And it just kind of disappears as it gets more to the edge. Now, I'm not really worried. Of course, there is texture in this piece of wood, but I'm not really worried about that at the moment as much as I am paying attention to just the shadows. This corner right here also has a little reflected light there. This is a little bit lighter. So just paying attention to the angles and the types of light will help something jump off of a page. What we also are missing here are the cast shadows. So let's work on the cast shadows. We have this cast shadow right here. As you can see from the block, is coming up this little hill that I have established here with some paper. So it's emanating from the base of the block, and then it curves up and sort of comes around like this. But it is the darkest right here, closest to the block. Yes, my Sheldon, do you want to be on the video too? And we've also got a pretty big shadow that starts from about right here and heads up. And runs into this. So. Something else that you should pay attention to when we're doing our cast shadows, and of course this is going to fade out a little bit here. Bring in some of my water here as we get farther away. And fade that out. All right. Now we also have the shadow for the little tub here that comes right about here, and it sort of almost blends in with the cast shadow of the block of wood. But this is a little bit darker. Sorry about this. I'm gonna get some more water. This is a little bit darker down here. All right. Something I want to show you. So we have this line that we've created. You can see right back through here, there's a little bit of a darker section there. This is my pointer. A little bit of a darker section there. It's not quite all black, but the shadow is really interesting because it kind of comes around the base of the tub. And it's almost like this one that is carrying around, but it's a cast shadow, actually. And then it gets a little bit lighter. Sometimes it's good to use your fingers. All right. Now I'm looking at up here, this part right here has a little bit, I kind of jump around. I hope that's okay with you. To differentiate. Now we're not outlining this. You're sure not to do a lot of outlining, because outlining is wonderful. It's good for some cartoon things that people do. I do a lot of outlining myself. But with this, you want to stick with just paying attention to the shadows, because you outline everything, then it just does not look real. So this is the point where we are using the actual shadows. I'm going to work on creating a background here. We're using the shadows to make the figures jump out. Now on the side wall, I don't know if you're able to see it, on this side wall section right back here, we see another cast shadow. Let me just finish this up. There's a lot of highlights in the back here. Now the light is hitting this wall, so it's a lot brighter over on this side, and which is great because I want to really be able to show you the cast shadow of that tub. You can blend all these cast shadows in now. Just play with it, but right now you're just paying attention to where the shadows themselves, oops, wrong brush, where the shadows are. So here, right here, we've got, comes down a little bit, but it's just a shadow. And we want to give it credence here because it's there and it makes things look a little bit more realistic, of course. But what we don't want is for it to look like another tub. So you just give it a little bit of that love right there. Darken it up a little bit. Okay, so again, you can continue to play with this. You can continue to blend your shadows, but pay attention to where the shadows are. And that's really what I wanted to teach you today, was paying attention, getting those shadows in, and then you can continue to play with them, play with your piece, but it really helps things to pop off of your canvas, make a 2D canvas more of a 3D canvas. And so there we go. Okay, for those of you that stuck in with me, we are talking about volume, shadowing, and 3D. Pay attention to your light source and just pay attention. Just pay attention, just like we have to do right now in life. So paying attention to our surroundings and keeping ourselves protected, but in that we keep others protected as well as we do this stay-at-home thing for this virus that we have going on. But stay hopeful and continue to be creative, continue to reach out to other people, and I hope to see you all soon. And remember to comment below. Don't forget that our website has my book, which is pretty awesome. And I'd love for you to read it. And I hope you all are enjoying this Back to Basics. All right, you guys, talk to you soon. Stay safe, stay well, stay healthy, and take care of you, take care of your family. Shelley signing out. Bye.